So, when was the last time you did something just for fun? Not networking, not a business retreat, and nothing you could write off as a tax deduction. Just for fun. If you feel guilty the second you aren't being productive, you haven't built a lifestyle. You've built a trap. But the most important business decision you'll ever make has nothing to do with funnels or your revenue. We are redesigning your business from the life outward. And I'm sharing three very blunt questions you need to answer to stop building for applause and start building for alignment. It's time to build a business that supports your life instead of consuming it. Welcome to the Midlife Business Academy. I'm Lori Lyons, marketing strategist, business coach, and accidental techie. After years of running a successful website design agency, I'm now building the business of my dreams and helping other midlife entrepreneurs do the same. From strategy to marketing to mindset, we covered what really matters when you're growing a business that fits your life. Let's get started. Welcome back to the Midlife Business Academy. I'm Lori Lyons. This is part 3 of our series, Building the Business of Your Dreams, again. And if you've been with me for the last couple of episodes, thank you. This series has been one of the most personal things I've put on the podcast. And today's episode is one I've been kind of building toward and thinking about and meditating on and, having to take a deep breath before I started. If you're just joining us, I want to encourage you to go back and listen to the first couple of episodes. Start with the Karen's coaching episode, hot seat coaching episode, because that's kind of what started all this. And it's not because you'll be lost without them, but because the conversation we're having today, you'll hear it differently if you've been listening and following the full journey. So here's kind of where we've been. In episode 1, we talked about what happens when you realize the dream has changed. Not because you failed, not because something went wrong, but because you've changed. And the business that you've built stop fitting the person you become. In episode 2, we talked about the myth of starting over, how the skills, the experience, the hard-won wisdom you've accumulated doesn't disappear when the dream shifts. You're not starting from scratch. You're starting from decades of proof that you know how to do this. And today, we're talking about the part that's really hard to prepare for, giving yourself permission to want something different. Because here's what I found with my clients and with myself. The hardest part isn't figuring out what you want. The hardest part is believing you're allowed to want it. And that's what today's about. I want to start here because I think it matters that we believe that the dream wasn't wrong. Everything that we've built, the hustle, the years of showing up and working hard and staying late and, all the stuff, the saying yes to opportunities, taking clients when we knew we shouldn't have, none of that was wrong. I'm the woman who's worked since she was 16, earlier if you count babysitting. I paid part of my way through college. I built businesses from the ground up. I've answered calls from vacation, and I've said yes when I probably should have said no. I took calls 2 hours after giving birth to a human with clients. So yes, I was all in. I wasn't making a life. I was making a business. And it fit me at the time, but it doesn't fit me today. That person was ambitious. I was determined. I was responsible. And I was doing exactly what I thought was needed to be and what was right at the time. The business got built. In fact, several businesses have been built since then. I've earned my reputation. The clients showed up and they trusted me with the real things that mattered. And none of that was wrong. And I wouldn't trade any of it for the experience that I have today. But the problem wasn't the dream. The problem was assuming that it would never change, that I would never change. Because here's what nobody tells you when you're in the middle of building something. Dreams aren't static. They're not a destination you set at 25 and arrive at by 50. They're living things. They grow with you. They shift as your priority shifts, as your life shifts, as you shift. And at some point, for a lot of us, the dream we've been chasing quietly became the dream we outgrew. Not dramatically and not overnight, not with any big announcement, just gradually it kind of crept up on us, almost without warning. The little things that used to drive you, eh, who cared? And that's not failure, that's growth. And the sooner we start treating it like a problem to be solved and start treating it like information to be honored, the sooner we can start building something that actually fits our life. Because there's invisible rules that we live by. And here's about what I want to talk about next, because I think this is what gets a lot of us stuck without even realizing it. We're walking around with these set of rules that we didn't consciously choose, rules we absorbed from that culture around us, from the industry we built our businesses in, from the masterminds we joined, from the gurus we followed, the metrics we were handed and told to care about. Rules like bigger is always better. More revenue is always the goal. A growing team means you're successful. You should always want more. If you're not scaling, you're stagnating. And I want to ask you something. Who died and left you in charge? Who decided all of this? Really? Who decides the measure of a successful business is how big it gets? Who decided that 7 figures is the finish line everyone should be running toward and bragging about? Who decided that wanting a smaller, simpler, more intentional business means you're not serious about it? Because I sat in a mastermind for a long time with really smart people. I've talked about this before. And everyone was pointed in the same direction, 7 figures, scale, grow, more, more, more. And I loved these people. I miss these people. I respect their vision. I learned from them. I'm grateful for the time I spent in the room. But at some point, it just wasn't, I really wasn't feeling right. And at some point, I grew quiet. And I finally realized that that destination wasn't mine anymore. I felt like a fraud in the room. And I didn't leave because they were wrong. I left because they were right for them. And that distinction matters enormously to me because the moment you realize that someone else's dream isn't your dream, that's not wrong. That's actually one of the most clarifying moments you can have as a business owner. It's the moment you start measuring yourself against a ruler that was never designed for you. The invisible rules only have power when you don't know that they're there. Once you see them, you can't unsee them, but you get to decide which ones you're keeping. If you're ready for weekly conversations, actually look at what's happening in your business, not just the pretty version of it, come join me here. Go ahead and subscribe to the channel and hit that notification button. The rebranding series might be wrapping up today, but every single week on this channel, we are stripping away the hustle nonsense culture and figuring out how to build a business that actually supports your life. Hit subscribe so you don't miss a single one. Now, to help actually put this into practice, let's look at that incredible competitive edge you have right now that most people are ignoring. It's called the midlife advantage. I want to spend a few minutes on something that I think gets completely overlooked in most business conversations. Most business advice, the books, the courses, the strategies, the masterminds come from people who are in building mode, early stage, growth stage, hustle mode, and that advice has its place. But midlife entrepreneurs bring something to the table that you simply can't manufacture. You can't shortcut your way to it. You can't buy it in a course or learn it in a weekend workshop. You can't pay $19.97 for it on TikTok and get it. And it's called perspective. You know what success costs, not theoretically, but personally. You've already paid the price. You know what burnout feels like because you felt it. You know what it's like to hit a goal and feel, nothing because you've been there. You know what matters and what doesn't, and what you're willing to sacrifice. And maybe more importantly, what you're no longer willing to sacrifice. You're not guessing anymore, you're choosing. And there is a big difference. In your 20s, you chase possibilities. Everything's open, everything's worth trying. The energy is there and the options feel endless. And you say yes to almost anything because you don't know yet what yes actually costs. In midlife, you start choosing priorities. You've done enough, built enough, sacrificed enough to know what you actually value. You have clarity that only comes from experience. You have discernment that only comes from making mistakes. You have wisdom that only comes from time. And that's not a liability. It's your greatest business asset. The problem is that most of us are so busy apologizing for where we are in life. We're too old for this, too late for that. We should have started sooner. Sound familiar? That we forget to leverage the one thing nobody else in the room has. We forget we've already paid for the education that everyone else is still enrolled in. We've done all of this before. We're experienced. So, what if you want less? Okay, this is the section I really want you to hear because I think this is the conversation that most people are having privately, their conversation in their heads and their journals in those quiet moments when their business is doing fine and they're not satisfied. But very few people are saying it out loud. What if you don't want a seven-figure business? The earth didn't stop. You know, I don't hear, people inhaling all around me saying, oh my gosh, you don't want a seven-figure business. What if you don't? What if you don't want a team of 20? What if you don't want to manage employees or run group programs or build a funnel empire or show up on every platform and optimize every metric? And this is a surprise because 3 years ago, I remember talking to my accountability partners like, what do you mean you don't want to build a group program? That's what blah, 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 blah. That's what we were expected and we thought we had to do. But what if you want fewer clients and better ones? What if you want more days off? What if you want to travel and actually be present when you do, not halfway on your phone managing something that can't run without you or pulling out your laptop? What if you want a business that supports your life instead of consuming it? I want to say something clearly, and I want you to actually lean in and listen. Wanting less stress doesn't mean you're less ambitious. Wanting more life doesn't mean you've given up. Wanting something different doesn't mean that you failed. The coaching industry and the hustle culture more broadly, that bro marketing hustle culture has done a tremendous amount of damage by conflating ambition with scale, by convincing an entire generation of entrepreneurs that wanting a simpler, more intentional business means you're settling or you're not successful. That's not pushing for more. You must not want it badly enough. That's not true. Designing a business around the life you want is not settling. It's arguably the most sophisticated business decision you can make. It requires more self-awareness, more intentionality, and more courage than chasing someone else's definition of success ever will. Because it's infinitely easier to follow a prescribed path than it is to define your own. Think about it. Go through the woods. Would you rather take the trail, worn, or would you rather hack through the foliage yourself? Which is easier? And defining your own at this stage with everything you know is not giving up, it's growing up. And isn't it about time we did? So let's talk about what comes next, because I want you to try something. And again, I really want you to do it, not just listen to the question and nod along and move along. I want you to imagine for a moment that nobody's watching. Nobody's comparing. Nobody's judging. Nobody's keeping score. The coaches you follow on Instagram or that you pay a lot of money to don't know what you've decided. The mastermind you used to be in doesn't have an opinion. Your peers aren't measuring themselves against you in that space with none of that noise. What would your business look like? Your peers aren't measuring themselves against you in that space with none of that noise. What would your business look like? How many hours would you work? What would you stop doing completely or hire out? What would you finally start doing? The thing that's been on the someday list for years. Who would you serve? How would you spend a Tuesday afternoon? What does success feel like in your body? Not on a spreadsheet, not on a revenue report, but actually feel like in your daily life. That vision, the one that comes up when you take away that outside noise, that's probably a lot closer to your real dream than what you've been publicly chasing. And here's what I want you to know about that vision. It doesn't have to be figured out all at once. It doesn't have to be perfect before you move forward. It doesn't require a complete overhaul of everything you've built overnight. It just requires a decision that this version of success, the one that fits your life, your values, your energy, your season, is worth building. Not someday, now. So before we close out the series, I want to leave you with something concrete. 3 sentences. I want you to finish them. Write them down, say them out loud, put them where you'll actually see them. Number 1, I'm no longer available for. Now, I want you to fill that honestly in. It can be weekend work, clients who drain you, constant availability, proving yourself to people who are never your audience anyway. Whatever it is, name it, because you can't move toward what you want until you get clear with what you're done with. Number 2, I want more. It can be freedom, creativity, impact, joy in life, joy in actual work, joy in my family, joy in just being me. Whatever your version of more looks like, write it down and don't apologize for it. Number 3, the next version of success looks like. This is not Instagram's version. This is not your mastermind's version. This is not what made sense for you 10 years ago. This is your version today for the life you actually want to be living. Those 3 sentences are the beginning of your blueprint. And if you want help turning that blueprint into an actual business, one that's built around your strengths, your lifestyle, and what you really want your days to look like, that's exactly the conversation I have with people every week. Go to talkwithlori.com and schedule a call with me. We'll talk about where you are, what you want, and what it actually looks like to build the business of your dreams. Not the one you started with, but the one that fits you where you are right now. Talkwithlori.com. I'd love to talk with you. So we've covered a lot of ground this month, and I want to kind of wrap it all up. In episode 1, we talked about what happens when the dream changes, how success and satisfaction are not the same thing, how the restlessness you feel isn't ingratitude, it's information, and how you're allowed, fully and completely allowed, to want something different than you wanted before. In the second episode, we talked about how you're not starting over, how the title changes, but the wisdom doesn't, how every skill, every lesson, every hard one piece of experience you've accumulated is coming with you into whatever life you build next. You're not starting from scratch. You're starting from strength. And today we talked about permission. Permission to redefine success on your own terms. Permission to want less of what was never working and more of what actually matters. Permission to walk away from the dream you outgrew without treating it like a failure. So here's what I want to leave you with. You're allowed to change your mind. You're allowed to redefine success. You're allowed to want something different than you wanted 10 years ago. You're allowed to build a business that fits your life you want now, not the one you were supposed to want, not the life that looks impressive from the outside, but the life that actually feels like yours. because the goal was never to build the biggest business possible. The goal was to build the right business, the one that supports the life you actually want to live. Because remember, it's never too late to build the business of your dreams, even if you're building that for the second time. Thank you for joining me on the Midlife Business Academy. If today's episode made you think, or made you feel, or made you feel seen, share it with a fellow business owner who could use it too. When you're ready for more support, you'll find the link to book your Profitable Path Blueprint call in the show notes. I'll be back next week with more insight and strategy to help you build a business that truly fits your life and one of your dreams. We'll see you next time on the Midlife Business Academy.